Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Subject is financial statement analysis. This is fourth online lecture, and today we will discuss liquidity ratio. In this lecture, we will discuss what are liquidity ratios, what are liquidity ratios formulas. We will explain these ratios with the help of illustration. Then we will discuss how we will interpret and discuss these liquidity ratio. So moving further, what are liquidity ratio? Liquidity ratios concerns about that the company short-term assets are enough to pay its short-term short-term assets are enough to pay its short-term liability. So liquidity ratio basically is concerned about this short-term assets sufficiency. Is it sufficient to the company have sufficient short-term asset to pay its short-term liability? So liability, L-I, short-term liabilities. So these two things are crucial in calculating these liquidity ratio. Liquidity ratios, what it portrays, used to determine debtor's ability. Debtors means the company who required or who borrowed some loan to pay off current debt obligation without raising external capital. It means that we have sufficient short-term asset, means cash, account receivables, and the company is able to generate enough resources from its short-term assets and from its generation to pay its short-term current obligation, means without getting external loan. Now liquidity, this is the main thing, is external capital, means the company will not apply to bank, will not apply to any external financing facility. Liquidity is the ability to convert asset into cash quickly and cheaply. Means that the company operate and then use its asset and then generate cash to pay its short-term liability. Liquidity ratios are most useful when they are used in comparative form, means we cannot give any opinion on a liquidity ratio of a single company. We will use on a single company. We will use in comparison with the other company. For example, if we analyze Quartz Cement Factory in its current liquidity ratios, and we interpret it solely its ratio with its past or with its in trend with its past year, it will not be enough. We will compare its liquidity ratios with other competitive firms like Lucky Cement or any other cement company of the same size who operating in the same working environment. So this analysis may be internal or external use. We will also consider other factor as well. We may compare the liquidity ratio of a single firms with single company with the industry averages as well. As I mentioned earlier, that we may use these assets or we analyze these liquidity ratios of multiple accounting period of the same firm, it will be called internal analysis. Let's suppose we calculate, let's suppose KCCL is Quad Cement Company Limited is a company operating in a cement industries, and we calculate its liquidity ratio, then compare it, let's suppose 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. We compare 5-year liquidity ratio. It is called internal analysis because we are comparing the liquidity ratio of KCCL with the risk liquidity ratio of the same countries but with the earlier accounting periods, and reported using the same accounting method. We will not change the accounting method when comparing the liquidity ratios. Means we will consistently apply all accounting policies. We will not change our accounting policies during these years. Now, external analysis involve when, as I told you earlier, that we will not, and it will not be enough to compare the KCCL liquidity ratios with its multiple with earlier accounting period, but it will be very helpful for the analyst and investors to compare the KCCL liquidity ratios with other firms and with the entire industry. So external analysis involves comparing the liquidity ratio of one company to another or an entire industry. So moving further, liquidity ratio. Why it is important to study these liquidity ratio? The information, because the information is useful to compare company strategic positioning in relation to its competitor when establishing a benchmark goals. Maybe we will study the liquidity ratio of the other competitor firms, and then we compare it with our companies, and then we set benchmark for ourselves that we will either lead them in liquidity or we will follow the competitors. Liquidity ratios analysis may not be ineffective when looking across industries. So this is one of the main crucial point across industries. Liquidity ratio of, let's suppose, cement cannot be compared with textile, and textile similarly it cannot be compared with the chemical industry. So it will not be helpful to compare the liquidity ratio of a cement company with the textile companies, because they have different needs, they have different supplier, they have different customers, they have different account receivable collection period, they have different regulations. So similarly, we cannot compare this textile with the chemical because they have different suppliers and they have different size in their operating in making the product. So it cannot be. It will be hard to compare the liquidity ratio of the firms in different industry, as various businesses require different financing structures. Now, liquidity ratios, similarly, sugar and textile cannot be compared because both companies are sugar and textile. Both are related to the agriculture product. One is acquiring raw material is a cotton, and other is acquiring raw material from that of sugarcane. But again, their financing structure in short term is quite different with one another. So liquidity ratio analysis is less effective for comparing businesses of different size. and different geographical location. So we will have to keep in mind that when we comparing two firms on the basis of want to study its liquidity positions, we will not compare the firm that are from different industry, and we will not compare the firms when one firm is very large and another is very small. Similarly, we cannot compare the firms who is operating here in southern region of the KPK is with that of any firm operating in, let's suppose, Uttar Pradesh of state of India. So we will have to compare the firms who are located in the same geographical location and under same regulations, same laws, same environment, and same infrastructure. So these are some point when we comparing the firm's liquidity ratio or any other ratios. We have to keep in mind these things. Now, one thing is, let's suppose what different sizes. Different sizes means when one firm is an oil marketing company, one is PSO and other is BICO, which is also called Busikar, BICO. There may be, you may have come across to observe that there is one company, an oil marketing company, which is called Oscar 1, Edmore. These are small companies, and this one is the market leader who is backed by in a state-owned enterprise and backed by the central government. But again, we cannot compare PSO with BICO because it involves a lot of employees, it involves regulations. PSO have more resources than BICO and other companies, so we cannot compare PSO and these two. We may compare PSO with Shell, which is multinational companies and have huge resources in all countries, so we can compare it with the Shells. BICO and Oscar may be comparable with each other. So different sizes of the firm cannot be compared. Liquidity ratios. What are liquidity ratios? We term it as current ratio. What is current ratio? We will discuss it in upcoming slides. What is quick ratio? We will also discuss this one in the coming slides. And operating cash flow ratio, but we will not discuss, we will just discuss one ratio which is called cash ratio. So cash ratio we will discuss in this lecture. Cash ratio, current ratio. What is current ratio? This ratio basically compare that how much current assets are available to pay your current liability. So measures the company ability to pay short-term obligation are those due within 1 year. So this ratio primarily provides the guidance to the investor or to the analyst that how much the company have current asset to pay its short-term obligation are those obligations which are due within 1 year. Then to calculate the ratio, analyst compares the company's current asset to its current liability. We will compare our current assets, or means the company current assets with its current liability. Now current ratio, the formula for the current ratio is equal to current assets divided by current liabilities. What is current asset and current liability? We discussed it in detail in earlier at start of semester in earlier lectures, but again I'm giving you a short review. Current assets listed in the company balance sheet include cash, account receivable, inventory, and prepaid expenses. One is these current assets include cash, account receivable, inventory, and one is prepayments. Prepaid expenses. So these are current assets. So one, two, 3, and 4. These are it's constitute a current assets. And other assets that are expected to be liquidated, turned into cash in less than 1 year. All those assets which are going to be converted into cash during 1 year is called also will be included in current assets. What are current liabilities then? Current liabilities means account payable, which constitute a major portion, wages payable, all those wages which are not paid, tax payable, and current portion of long-term debt. Current portion of long-term debt means that if you borrowed, if you had borrowed, let's suppose 1 million earlier in let's suppose 2010, and that's one of the installment is due in this 2020, which is let's suppose 20,000. This installment is due in 20,000. So we will call it, this is current liability. We will also report it in a current liabilities. Now, quick ratio or asset test ratio. Current ratio means current liability divided by current asset divided by current liability. What is quick ratio? There are certain observations on the inventory and prepayments. There are multiple issues also in inventory. And even inventory valuation can cause increase or decrease in the amount of cost of goods sold in inventory reported on the balance sheet. If you are using LIFO method, it will increase last in first out. It will increase your cost of goods sold. CS means cost of sale will increases, but inventory will be decreasing. If you are using it will decrease cost of goods sold. LIFO method will decrease cost of goods sold and will increase inventory in the balance sheet. Similarly, FIFO method will increase cost of goods sold but will decrease the value of inventory on the balance sheet. So even in inventory, there may be slow moving inventory. So some people have, some investors have reservation on the current asset current ratio. So there is then in order to address this issue, the asset, then they calculate the quick ratio or asset test ratio. This means measures company ability to meet its short-term obligation with its most liquid asset. What are most liquid assets? Most liquid assets are considered as cash and cash equivalent, and then second is account receivable. Since it indicates that the company's ability to instantly use its near cash asset that can be converted quickly into cash to pay down its current liability. It is also called asset test ratio. As I discussed that what those assets will be used to can be converted into cash without deteriorating its value, without declining its value. And these assets is used to pay its current liabilities. So most liquid assets in comparison to its current liability will calculate quick ratio. So what is quick ratio? Quick ratio is equal to cash plus marketable securities plus account receivable. These three are considered as As I told you earlier that cash and cash equivalents, then account receivables are considered as most liquid asset divided by current liabilities. It will calculate quick ratio or asset test ratio. Or we can also calculate this quick ratio by current asset minus inventories minus prepaid expenses divided by current liabilities. Most often this second formula is used in practice. So quick ratio is it's measure the ability of the company to pay its short-term obligation with its most liquid assets. So those reservation who on inventory is removed by this quick ratio formula or asset test ratio formula. Then there is another we will further discuss that what is quick ratio and what are its usefulness. The numerator of the liquid asset should include assets that can be easily converted into cash in short term within 90 days or so without compromising on their pricing. As I discussed, that those assets who can be converted in short term time periods without compromising or without declining its value is called cash or cash equivalent. Secondly, inventory is not included in quick ratio. Why? Because many companies, in order to sell through their inventory in 90 days or less, would have applied steep discounts to incentivize the customer to buy quickly. There may be that inventory have contain three things. One is finished goods, work in process, and raw material. All these three things are included in inventory. But when finished goods are sold at deep discount, then it will lose its value. That's why one of the reservation of the investor on the inventory is in order to give incentives to the customer, the company also sell its inventory on discounts. So it is excluded in the quick ratio or asset test ratio. Now cash ratio. What is cash ratio? Sometimes people have also observation on fake account receivables, that the company generate fake account receivables. So in order to address this issue, the cash ratio is measurement of the ability companies liquidity, specifically the ratio of the company total cash and cash equivalent to its current liability. Means this ratio communicate that how much the company have a liquidity to pay all its current liability through cash or cash equivalents. In other words, if immediately all customers and all those who have claim on the company demand their claim or demand their amount at once, then that how much company have a capacity to satisfy all these claim holder or all these people. Although it is very impossible, it have very low probability that it will happen, that all suppliers, all employees will claim their money at once. But again, this cash ratio provides that how much the company have most liquid asset, that is cash equivalent to pay its short-term obligations. calculates company ability to repay its short-term obligation with cash or near to cash resources, such as easily marketable securities. How we will calculate the cash ratio? The cash ratio is calculated cash and cash equivalents divided by current liabilities. So this is cash ratio. The utmost liquidity is calculated by this formula, that how much cash and cash equivalents are available to pay its current liabilities. Moving further, liquidity illustration. Now we will discuss these ratio with the help of illustration. In order to explain these ratio, we will consider excuse me, below illustration. The balance sheet of Mr. Amber Private Limited and Mr. Babar Private Limited are given below. This is the balance sheet of two companies. Preference shares, equity shares of both companies, reserves and surpluses, long-term loan, bills payable, this is short-term liability, sundry creditors, outstanding expenses means wages, etc., etc. Proposed dividend, those are those dividend which are declared but not yet paid. The company have a liability to pay these dividend in a short time periods. So this is liability side of the balance sheet. The balance sheet of Mr. Amber and Private Limited, the asset side is land 160,000 to 46,000, plant and machinery, temporary investment, that is investment which the company have any surplus amount invest in these marketable security and then liquidate it time in and when needed. So investment, there is long-term investment, sundry debtors, prepaid expenses, cash and cash balances. We don't have inventory in these both companies. Calculate current ratio, quick ratios and cash ratios. Now, what is current ratio? Current ratio is equal to current asset divided by current liability. We will pick values from these balance sheet of both company, and then we will put it in this formula in order to calculate the current ratio. By plugging value in the above formula for both the companies, we get Amber Private Limited and Power Private Limited. So current ratio is equal to 38,000 is current assets of Amber Limited divided by 88,000 is current liability, which is let me show you in the big slides. This is current assets. These are current assets. And this one 10 plus 18,000, 20,000, and this is 36,000. 10,000, 18, 20 and 36. This is 80,000, 26,000, 40,000 and 20,000. This one, this and this. Now what are current liability? These are current liabilities. bills payable, sundry debtors, creditors, outstanding expenses proposed. Bills payable, this one, sundry creditors, outstanding expenses, and proposed dividend. So we add these values and put it in the formula. $38,000 divided by 88,000. Now we get that current ratio for the number is 0.4381. Current ratio, current assets for Bauer Limited is 90,000 divided by its current liability, which is 200,000, and we calculate this 0.45 is current ratio. It means that for $1, for 1 rupees, rupee 1, the Amber have, for 1 rupee of liability, the Amber have 43 paisas to pay 1 rupee of liability, and Babar have 0.45 paisa to pay 1 rupee of liability. So apparently this company is better than this one. Apparently Babar Limited is better than Amber Private Limited, but often the current ratio should be 1, means 1 rupee for 1 rupee of asset should be kept for paying 1 rupee of liability, but here the company have 0.43 paisa in order to pay 1 rupees of liability, current liability. Similarly, the Bauer Limited have 0.45 paisa, 45 paisa in their current asset to pay 1 rupee of current liability. Interpretation in comparison is based on the assumption that both firms of same industry and same sector operating in same geographical location. Now, quick ratio. Quick ratio means current asset minus inventory minus prepaid expenses divided by current liabilities. By plugging value in the above formula, we get for Amber Private Limited and Babar Private Limited, we calculate current ratio, quick ratio, that is 38,000 divided by 88,000. 90,000 divided by 200,000. 32 and 34. So this is not 38,000, it is let me show you. Prepaid expenses. Prepaid expenses is 2,000. Yes, and prepaid expenses is here 4,000. There is no inventory. That would not be now 38, it would be now 36 because we will minus these 2,000 prepaid expenses divided by 88,000. Similarly, it will not be 90,000, now it will be now reduced by 4,000. $32 and 34. It means that if a company, in this case, this company have, in order to pay 1 rupee of liability, it have most liquid asset, that is cash in account receivables or marketable securities, 34 paisa to pay 1 rupee of liability. It have 32 paisa to pay 1 rupee of liability. Apparently this company is in better position. Cash ratio. Cash means cash and a cash equivalent divided by current liabilities. We will also plugging values from these balance sheets in the formula are both companies, Amber Private Limited and Babar Private Limited. Cash ratio is 16,000 are cash and cash equivalent divided by 88,000 is current liabilities, that is 0.1818. 20,000 is cash and cash equivalents divided by 200,000, which is 0.1. So how we will interpret it? It means that the company Amber have 18 paisa to pay 1 rupee of liability, current liability. Similarly, the Babar have 10 paisa to pay 1 rupee of current liabilities. But keep in mind, these interpretation and comparison is based on the assumption that both firms are from the same industry and operating in the same geographical location. We cannot compare the company who are operating in different sector or different geographical location. So by comparing, when we calculate these assets liquidity ratios, then we will compare it with the company's earlier accounting periods. It will provide us a trend that how much we are better in utilizing our current asset or maintaining our current asset or maintaining our liquidity. We will compare these with competitors, we will compare these with the industry averages as well. This is all about today's lecture. Thank you.